Hello and welcome to Sansad TV. You're watching Viewpoint with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Well, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code is undergoing several streamlining procedures to enhance its efficiency and effectiveness. These measures aim to reduce delays, improve transparency, and ensure better outcomes for both creditors and debtors. Now, the IBC is a crucial piece of legislation for India's economic landscape, aiming to address the challenges associated with insolvency and bankruptcy in a more efficient and effective manner. The overall recovery rate, of course, of late under the IBC rose marginally to 32.76% in the fourth quarter of FY25 from 31.39% in the previous quarter. While the uptick suggests progress in resolution outcomes, the average haircut remains steep, with creditors recovering less than one-third of their admitted claims, and this remains a concern. In this edition of Viewpoint, we will analyze the progress of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code and how to make it more effective and efficient. Joining me on the program today are Dr. M.S. Sahoo, former Chairman, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India; Anil Goyal, CA and founder, AAA Insolvency Professionals; and Sumant Batra, insolvency lawyer and consultant. Thank you to my guests for joining me on this edition of Viewpoint. MS Sahoo, let me start the program with you first. Let's first try and understand and, put into perspective for us how the IBC has reached where it is today, what has been the progress over the last 9 years, and what are the big takeaways, really?
Thank you so much for having me here. The IBC journey can be best looked through the objective numbers. Fortunately, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India has been putting out the numbers much more objectively.
Okay, go on.
So let's look at the numbers. So far, 8,500 corporate debtors have been admitted into the resolution process. Of them, about 6,500 have exited. Of them, about 1,1300 have been withdrawn. 1,1300 have been closed by review or appeal. The balance have ended up either with a resolution plan or have ended up with a liquidation.
Anil Goyal, let me come to you now. Mr. Sahoo was pointing out and talking about, what has really happened as far as the IBC is concerned. How would you look at the progress that we have seen with regards to IBC? What are some of the positives? What is it that stands out for you?
So, IBC in fact brought a lot change in the economy, in the management of stressed assets, how the companies under financial stress can be resolved under IBC, especially the larger companies. See, earlier before IBC we had BIFR, where the history says that not much was resolved in 20 years of BIFR. Then came SARFAESI law in 2002 that was dedicated to recovery of security interest by the financial creditors, by the secured creditors. But now that SARFAESI law has also kind of matured enough with a lot of judgments from Supreme Court of India, and that is presently a very, very robust and clean and fast implication law. So that is where the security interest, all the collateral securities, primary securities can be recovered by the banks without even reaching out to a court. So that also helped a lot in recovery process of the banks. But Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code was not for recovery, it was for resolving larger cases where the recovery is not really the focus, but resolving the entire company, resolving the business, keeping the company as a going concern without the promoters who could not handle this company for the last couple of years. Without them, there was a platform where this company can be resolved. Then this company can be given to any other better management, better group, better industrial house who can invest, use their own management expertise and resolve it, so that there is no loss to workers, there is no loss to productivity, and there is no loss to the economy as a whole. So that is what was the original objective of IBC, and which we see presently that it is actually getting met, because there is no other option available for resolving the stressed assets, especially the larger companies, and also in some of the smaller companies where the options of SARFAESI law or any other recovery is not really imminent, or there is no result oriented. So the insolvency law still shows a way forward for all those creditors, secured lenders, even in smaller cases.
Absolutely. Thank you for for painting that picture for us and letting us know exactly where things stands and how things have progressed as well. Mr. Sahoo has rejoined us. Mr. Sahoo, let me come back to you now. You are making a point about the progress and evolution of the IBC. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was mentioning that fortunately we have good amount of data which allows us to objectively assess the outcome of its processes. So of the 8,500 companies admitted into the resolution process, 6,500 have been resolved by either through a resolution plan or liquidation or withdrawal or on a review and appeal. The primary objective of the IBC, as Mr. Goel was pointing out, is the stress resolution or insolvency resolution. Nowhere in the entire IBC the word recovery is used. It has been a mistake on the part of some of the creditors to believe that IBC is meant for recovery, and then they are using the recovery percentage to look at the outcome of IBC processes. IBC is essentially meant for the economy has limited resources. They must not remain stuck up in unviable, defunct entities. They must be used continuously all 24 hours of the day for the society. So if some assets, some resources, some entrepreneur are stuck up in a chakravyuh of defunct companies, it is a dragging down growth. The objective is that let us put those resources to optimal use either through a resolution plan whereby a new person comes in with more efficient approaches, technology, whatever management practices, takes over the entity, improves the productivity of the company. Or the market feels that this company is absolutely unviable, let us close it, release the resources at the earliest possible for alternate uses. In that sense, the 6,500 companies, those who have exited the process, they have successfully been resolved. About 2,000 are ongoing.
Right.
The IBC also provides that this resolution should happen in an efficient manner. It provides for two efficiency parameters. One is it should be time bound, other is it should be cost effective, or it should have a better value realization. So as regards time bound, the law expected that resolution process should get completed in 180 days time. Nowadays we find that the last quarter data as IBB has released, a resolution process takes about 780 days. So in terms of timeline, we are not doing well. As regards value maximization, which is the other efficiency parameter IBC provides for, the realization has been about 32% of the claims of the creditors. But we must know that the claims is some way not related, not in sync with the assets available with the company. Market will give a value for the assets available, not that how much the company owes to somebody else.
Okay.
So in respect of the assets available, the resolution plans are yielding about 170% of the liquidation value. And of the fair value, it is also giving about 90%. So one would expect that the resolution process should give at least 100% of the fair value. That is not happening. So in terms of both the efficiency parameters in time bound and value maximization, we are not doing well.
Okay, points
Beyond
very well
this,
taken. Points very well taken. I'll come back to you, of course, for more comments on this. Let me bring in Suman Batra as well, who's been patiently listening to the other two panelists thus far. You know, as far as taking the the discussion forward and the point that Mr. Sahoo was making, what are some of the challenges, what are some of the shortcomings, and what are some of the loopholes that have been exploited?
Well, thank you so much, Frank, for having me here, first of all. I want to add 2-3 more points before I respond to your question on what I believe is some of the other highlights of the IBC which have benefited the economy. I think one of the remarkable achievements of the IBC has been that it has created a high degree of confidence amongst the investors, both internationally and domestically, to invest in the economy, because we didn't have an exit law. And who wants to invest in an economy which welcomes you with open arms but doesn't give you a dignified exit or a cost efficient or a speedy exit? I think that's one of the main highlights as far as I'm concerned for IBC. Number two, I think what it did and already in the last 7 to 8 years is that it has resolved the problems in the banking sector. When in 2014 Bankruptcy Law Reforms Committee was constituted, the banking sector was on the verge of a crisis. And what it has done in last 5 years is brought down the non-performing assets to a manageable level below 3%, and I think that in itself is a very remarkable achievement and outcome in a very short period of time. And the third is that it has created a different culture in the country in terms of discipline that it has brought, where the debtors are now far more willing to pay as against in the past where you borrowed the loan and forgot about it. Now, coming to your point in terms of the challenges, of course, Dr. Sahoo mentioned about the speed. I think speed is something which is, everybody has spoken about it, and in my view, that these are hiccups that we can resolve. We have to a large extent already, and we will going forward. But I think there are 3 other significant issues that we need to look at going forward. One, we have to realize that IBC was created in the times when we were facing an economy that was on a decline. After a rise in the early 1990s or late 1990s, we started declining, and that was the time when BLRC was constituted. It was constituted to solve the problems that were hampering the economic growth. Now, having achieved a substantial part of that, I think we need to sort of now look forward as to what are the issues that we are going to face in future or already are facing, which are different from the last 10 years, and see how IBC can be tweaked in order to resolve those issues. And I identified 3 areas in that very quickly. I know that we have short time. One, I think we need to. There are 4 institutions in IBC which are considered the pillars of insolvency system. We need to reinvent all the 4 in a way and tweak them to sort of make them as the 21st century institutions, because most of these institutions, barring IU and to an extent IBBI, were conceived way back in the late 1990s when we were dealing with very different problems. So solutions were also very different. But today our problems are different, and our institutions need to be very dynamic, robust. Will have to cater to a very young generation, very enthusiastic, ambitious, aspirational citizens, which are 30, 32 years of average in age. And therefore, they expect their institutions also to be something which they can align with, they can somehow feel more connected with. That's one point. The second point, I think, is that we need to extend the IBC, or at least the insolvency system, to other economic activities, because there are many other entities that do economic activities in the overall economy. It's not just the corporate persons and individuals with economic activities. We need to also sort of start focusing on them, like for example municipal corporations. There are banking sectors, institutions and non-banking finance companies. Many of them are not covered by the IBC, barring those that are financial service providers that are notified to be so under the IBC.
Sure.
And in order to make sure that these entities also have an available robust insolvency system, it's important to look beyond IBC and beyond corporate persons and individuals, so that they're at any point in time facing problems do not in any manner obstruct our economic growth, the targeted economic growth.
Right. Mr. Goyal, let me come back to you now. Let's also look at, the IBC from its inception, of course. The implementation of the IBC, has it remained the same? What has changed? What more needs to be done, do you think?
I believe this implementation is the responsibility of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, and what we have seen IBBI is very, very active. IBBI is keen to take feedback from all stakeholders, including insolvency professionals, bankers, see, like any kind of stakeholders who ever has any interest in the insolvency, IBBI takes the feedback. In fact, the present chairman, even the earlier Dr. Sahoo, when Dr. Sahoo was the chairman, even the present chairman, Mr. Ravi Mittal, they invite us only for a meeting to take feedback about the difficulties and how to resolve that. And based on all this feedback, the regulations are made. In fact, too many amendments has been done in the regulations so that practically it becomes easier, the compliances gets reduced. In fact, the last in this month of May, on 19th of May 2025 and again on 26th of May 2025, the two regulations were notified by IBBI, again based on the feedback. The feedback is how to reduce litigation, how to reduce the time of CIRP, how to maximize value, and how to finally settle the disputes between the stakeholders. Like even mediation is one part of it, which is presently under a process of consultation. Even the mediation also will resolve some of the disputes, and finally the period of resolution, which is called CIRP period, will be substantially reduced. So IBBI's activeness is actually working very well, and presently there are a couple of issues. Some issues are pending before Honorable Supreme Court, and rather than couple of issues pending before the Supreme Court, we don't see anything which is pending before IBBI which can be done and has not been done. That's what is my understanding.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you. Let me take what you're saying to Mr. Sahoo now. Mr. Sahoo, Mr. Goyal is suggesting that the feedback mechanism as far as the IBBI is concerned is extremely strong. The feedback is taken well, and always we're trying to implement that feedback as well, with several amendments being brought about to ensure that the process is smoothened. Now, since we are here and we are talking about, a smoothing of the process, what more needs to be done, do you think?
I was talking about the time-bound resolution. A corporate debtor must be admitted swiftly before it becomes unviable. A resolution plan needs to be approved promptly before it runs out of money. The resources locked up in defunct entities should be released expeditiously before they dissipate. And the value lost through avoidance transactions needs to be plowed back quickly before they become intractable. So all these are linked to the timeline, and we are failing on that timeline. And therefore, supposing somebody is submitting a resolution plan today, and he has to wait for 3 years for his plan to be approved by the authorities, then he has no incentive, and after 3 years, resolution plan may no more be viable. So therefore, he is deciding today, why they take the risk and get stuck up for 3 years? Better I plan some other investment opportunities. So this is actually dampening the distressed assets market. So we need to find out a quick resolution to make the things happen in the way law expected. It should be time bound. And time bound, there are problems in the entire ecosystem, starting from resolution professional, committee of creditors. But we are finding that we are getting really stuck up at the NCLT level. NCLT was created as a part of the company law with a capacity of 63 members to deal with the company law problems. Today, IBC, which is much more complex, has been given to that without addition of a single member. And of the 63, quite a few also remain vacant. So until we improve the capacity at NCLT, just the bench strength, of course, you need to improve case management, you need to improve the cultural things, so many things need to be done. But until you improve the capacity, just the number, it's difficult to achieve the timelines. This is one. The second is, there is a fundamental misunderstanding about the purpose of the law. and that has flown from the highest court. The Supreme Court says that the preamble or the long title to the law nowhere mentions about the liquidation. And it says that every effort must be made to rescue a company and liquidation should be the last resort. And this is not the intention of the law. Law says that it is for the insolvency resolution, and that resolution can happen either ways, either through a resolution plan or a liquidation. Both are equally efficacious in releasing the entrepreneur, releasing the resources for alternate uses, or putting the resources back in viable enterprises. So because the message has gone out that liquidation is bad and companies should not get into liquidation, the market participants, NCLT, LAT, everyone tries. If there is any way, try to rescue, even if it is an unviable company, and in the process, we waste the resources.
Sure.
The third,
I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you, with Dr. Sahoo, with what more needs to be done in the final round of comments as well. Let me bring in Mr. Batra once again into the picture. We are talking about amendments. We are talking about changes. We are talking about a more efficient and a better IBC. There's likely that there could be an amendment to the Act as well in the monsoon session of Parliament. There's a lot of talk about that too. So, what is it that is desired?
Well, Frank, the market has three headline expectations. Of course, there would be many amendments to deal with, to plug some of the gaps. But I think in terms of the three main aspirations, one is the cross-border insolvency framework, which is what is being demanded from the day one. And I remember the Joint Parliamentary Committee report on the bill that was introduced in the Parliament in 2015, where it very categorically said that if given India's positioning at the global stage, we can't have an insolvency system which doesn't deal with the cross-border insolvency issues. At that point in time, of course, it was decided that let's first have our domestic insolvency law, municipal insolvency law in place, and we'll have a look at the cross-border later. And we've been talking about it now for almost nearly 7 to 8 years. I remember that I and Dr. T.K. Vishwanathan drafted the bill, gave it to then Honorable Finance Minister Arun Jaitley ji, and after that, of course, it has gone through many rounds of discussions. It's been in the public domain, and we're hoping that that in this bill we might see some progress on that. The second is the group insolvency, because we've experienced a large number of cases where there are entities that have group companies and various avatars. They could be subsidiaries, they could be just associate companies or other kind of entities in which one major company has varied interests. And we've experienced that it is quite difficult to capture the value that is transferred in these various entities, and invariably the holding company or the company that goes into insolvency is left really without any value in the assets, and it's hard to claw back the assets because of the sovereign status of those entities, and therefore there needs to be at least some mechanism where there are companies that go into insolvency or can be taken into insolvency for reasons that there are commonalities of lenders, there are defaults and various other factors. So we are hoping that at least to a large extent this also will come in. And the third is something which of course we all have been talking about, is the effective implementation. Because one of the areas where the red flags have appeared over the last 7-8 years is that even though we are able to successfully pass a resolution plan, but it's in the implementation where the cracks appear, and the cracks keep getting widened, and we see that, like for example, even the Bhushan power case recently, that even after 4 to 5 years, the Supreme Court stuck its side. So therefore, we need to sort of ring fence and secure effective implementation in a very seamless way. The integrity of the process and the resolution and the outcome needs to be preserved, the implementation, and we're hoping that there will be some meaningful changes in the law to ensure that implementation becomes certain and predictable. And I just want to actually add one headline item. I think what I can draw from what Dr. Sahoo has mentioned and your opening comments, Frank, and of course what Anil also mentioned, is that what is lacking, if I may say, at the macro level. At the micro level, if you sort of try to define how you would say, What we have not been able to achieve to a large extent is the certainty and predictability of the process.
Sure.
And that is where the investor confidence starts shaking, because what they really want is that I should know this is how it has happened, this is how it's going to happen, this is the time frame it will happen, and at the end of the day, this is how I will end up with.
Right.
And that's where, unfortunately, we have failed to an extent.
Okay, time to get closing comments now from all my panelists with the best way forward and
So
what next.
If you allow, can I add a couple
Yes.
of, on the same question that you asked?
Sure.
Maybe a little more technical, but see, once this amendment is being done, I think we can use this platform to say that there are a couple of other technical amendments which are required for effective implementation of IBC. Number one, the Section 53 presently is confusing whether the priority of security interest and the priority of charges and the value of security interest will be considered by the liquidator or not. So there are a lot of litigation which are pending before various forums. So that is where we need some amendment. Number two, a clarification is required from the Parliament whether even if there is a attachment of assets by the statutory authorities before or after the commencement of insolvency, whether they would have a secured right over that property or not. So these are, see, this is something which is disturbing the entire process. And third, which is important, any new management comes, the resolution applicant that we call, now he is now getting notices from Income Tax Department under Section 41, subsection 1, and under Section 28, subsection 4 of Income Tax Act. Now, the Income Tax Department says that in case the total liabilities in the books is 1,000 and you have taken this company for a 500 rupees, so this 500 rupees, the benefit that this company has got 1,000 minus 500 will be taxable in the hands of the company. And that will be taxable only after the resolution plan is approved, because then the liabilities are crystallized. So there are a lot of resolution applicant, they are avoiding this participating into the resolution process because of this anticipated tax liability. So this also can be corrected.
Absolutely, points well taken. Mr. Sahoo, we've got limited time, so very quickly, in maybe 30 to 45 seconds, your closing comments on the program.
Yeah, I would like to reiterate what Mr. Batra told is the finality of the transactions. This is an economic transaction. If it has been approved, it has the approval of the competent authority and it has been implemented. It must not be undone years or decades later. What has come up in the case of Bhushan Power and Steel, the Supreme Court undid a transaction which was implemented 5 years ago. One can find out irregularities subsequently, but there are ways to deal with those irregularities and have also stringent penalties. Don't undo a transaction, particularly when it has the approval of a competent government authority. The second aspect, which Mr. Batra also told, is about, as I told, this is an economic law where we expect freedom to exit must be an economic entitlement of the entities. This law is today available for 1.7 million companies, but there are 170 million enterprises which are having the economic resources and which are the breeding ground for entrepreneurship. They do not have a way to exit, so therefore the entrepreneurship, which is one of the key objectives of the law, is suffering. And beyond that, we have 1,400 million individuals they also need. The law provides for these proprietorship, partnership firms and individuals, and 10 years have passed, we have not implemented it. I think that must not be delayed any further.
Absolutely. And Suman Batra, please close the show for us with your quick concluding
Thank you
remarks.
so much. In fact, my appeal would be to not the Parliament as much, but to the Honorable Supreme Court, because you see, today the NCLT members are selected on the basis of a selection committee. We need to move to a search and selection committee like we do for most of the economic law institutions. And for that, the Honorable Supreme Court needs to reconsider its Madras High Court Bar Association judgment, which in NCLT case decided how the composition and how the appointment process for the members of the NCLT should be. We need to move on to We need to shift gears to a 21st century institution, and the members should be appointed by invitation, by search, and not just by selection, by putting an advertisement and expecting people to invite. And that would require a review of the judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court, and I hope the Honorable Supreme Court would consider, since a lot of water has flown through under the bridge since those 25 years ago when the Madras High Court Bar Association judgment came.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it at that. MS Sahoo, Sumant Batra and Anil Goyal, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, that's it in this edition of Viewpoint. This is Frank Rausen Pereira signing off.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.